Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to see a race to make a game. Therefore, welcome back to RayznGames. Today we are going to see how I made a game for a jam. Let's dive in. If you're wondering what a game jam is, let me give you 5 cents on it. It is a place where video game developers congregate to race themselves to create video games during a given time frame. As in any race, some rules should be complied with. All the video game projects sent within the jam timeframe and the rules are then evaluated, and winners of the jam are shown to prize the better contestants. A jam, as well, is usually centered around one theme. So be careful picking up the jam that you really want to work on. Or sometimes the jam theme will not even be published until the jam starts. It is nice to note that whenever you enter a jam, you always have the possibility within the jam timeframe to leave the jam. And if you're not feeling confident enough that you're going to finish the project, bail out, boy. Pretty fun. Let's go ahead and explain what went on. So, the lights went green. Because I like racing, and therefore that's what I call it, go green.
Lights out!
And the jam started. Everyone set off rambling to understand the topic, but I was sleeping because I live in Spain and I started at 3 AM, so I decided to sleep well and wake early in the morning to face my demons. Day 1, 7 AM. I woke up and set off stumbling beside my bed, running while smashing my body left and right, trying to get to the coffee machine so I could get a sip of the last iced coffee in 14 days. While sitting at my desk and opening the jam page, I coughed while sipping my brown godsend brew, diminishing my breathing capabilities and therefore my brain cell power got caught in the riddle. The jam theme was aberration. Monkeys smashed clumsy drums in my head as a sign of me losing absolute faith in understanding such a topic. Google on the jam page prompted me that aberration or something aberrative is usually an unexpected outcome from the expected one. Exactly what the jam said about it, or something similar to that, one brain cell can do more. So I set off in a bombardment of ideas and looked at some concepts I wanted to properly touch since a little bit of time. After writing down several ideas, I came close to the final idea. I wanted to make a space game, and to try to make it aberrative, I would spice up the shuffle with a friendly giant spider that the player needs to save and then leave the ship in a rush between falling equipment and explosions to complete the game. What a horrific transgression to people who hate spiders, right? I had to consider whether I was going to make the game in 2D or 3D because the tools used and the requirements were different and could change dramatically the approach taken. I chose 3D as I am a 3D modeler and environment designer myself. Therefore, I started creating 3D models of the ship rooms and corridors, or at least the basic blocking to see if the concept was going to work, because I have never worked before in sci-fi concepts or anything like that. After a few conceptual rooms and some other stuff, I quickly realized that I would greatly benefit from creating a modular system of interconnecting corridors and rooms with the given objects of each room, providing a given sense of what the room is doing or what is supposed to happen there. This modular system of building blocks I've conceived would really help me later on to build up the map in a breeze, thanks to simply having to move the building blocks around and snap them like a piece of a Lego set. To be honest, I was not extremely confident at this point that I could do it, but I simply went and tried it, because it's always good to try new techniques and see if they can work for future projects, and this one actually went way better than expected. So I decided to leave the map stuff for the next day and focused on finishing the start of the game. As I envisioned, the player would start in a space pod seeing the amazing stars and galaxies of space. That space pod was directly targeted to the main ship, where the player was going to be taken in order to complete some tasks. So I went on, designed the starting pod. That took me the entire day. I designed it, I textured it in Substance Painter, everything was beautiful. Really cool, actually. It was one of the best things I did in this game. And now I needed to work on the skybox. The skybox was going to be different to what I did before with the environment system, although I took many things from the environment system like the stars. So the skybox is made using the URP shader graph. We use some Voronoi noise nodes in order to create the stars and some gradient noises that are scaled up in order to fill up the space with the color that we multiply them with. So then we no longer have a pitch black with some white stars, we can have multiple colorful kinds of stars and multiple colorful kinds of gradients that are going to be over the black part of the space that will help bring up a little bit more of life into this. And everything was starting to look kind of the space game I was looking for. Pretty good. I simply needed to make the models for everything else now. Oh, quite a chunky thing. Only one day gone. Day 2 began. It began with me confident to get away with clearing the map stuff quickly. I started modeling a single straight corridor with maximum of one length, and started working from there on, a T-junction, a four-way junction, a turn model, and all the models were checked to ensure snapping between each other. Then I modeled a set of rooms that correctly snapped to all of the previous models. And I obeyed the similar principle of keeping sizes and heights to ensure proper snapping. To finalize that day, I created the texture for each model in varying levels of detail to test different texturing quality levels. One tiny room, one normal double-decker, and two big rooms, all of them with different doorway configurations. That was all I could do on day 2. And I left testing the snapping for tomorrow, as I was pretty much late in the night at that time. I imported everything into Unity, I textured the objects in Unity, I made them look good, and then I tried to create the basic map to see if everything was snapping correctly. And then, it's when I saw it, the T-bone junction. So, I went on the modeling software I use and fixed it. I also created extra room types and revised all the pieces to correctly snap together again, as I was already at it and I had nothing to lose. But at least, I got the most out of the revisit. Day 3 ended with a basic map with all the basic pieces snapping tested and functioning correctly and as expected, leaving no gaps, and the map was ready to be built. But before building it, we needed something else to decorate the map with. Yep, everything else. Day 4. Day 4 started with the goal of creating all the possible assets that the game was going to need. Thoughtfully, I made a list of them and got to work as soon as I could. And frankly, it went fairly smoothly. All the objects seen on screen were built during that day. Textured, tested, and fixed if needed. To finish work on them as soon as possible and get on going with the overall design and programming of the game. Because next day was day 5. Day 5 was the grand day, the start of the game development. As you saw, these last 4 days have been spent producing a major part of the 3D art and texture design of all the objects. Therefore, no real progress on the game has been made out in the beautiful space skybox we had visible since day 1 and the pod. This day things had to change, or I would be in the horrible path of pain, suffering, and night adventures in less than I could realize. I started creating all the prefabs for all the rooms, corridors, and objects that were going to be repetitively used in the game. I also invested a good amount of time setting up the lighting for each prefab object with default and emergency kinds of lights, preparing for the electric system and ensuring I left room for bleeding lights from neighboring room lights to not exceed the URP's lights per object limit of 8 and have bad light shading. I created some movement controls and a camera system for the first-person character controller for this game. I always wanted to have a Half-Life-like character controller because I always felt attracted to it. And I don't know why, but it felt right to me for this game. To finish off things, I finally constructed the first ever iteration of the map and I gave it a quick test. And finally, the game was not empty, which is a great success in order to make a game in a jam. In day 6, I created the animation from all the doors and ensured that it was as satisfying as I could make it. which it was. And after taking a deep look at major part of the asset's material textures, I saw some minor issues that needed to be fixed. After fixing these visual problems, I created a simplified interaction system that will handle the interaction with all the interactable objects. The way this initially worked is by setting all the interactable objects tag to be an interactable tag, and create a script interactable info that will define the type, name, and description properties of the given interactable. And then, in another script, we cast a ray forward towards where the camera is facing. The ray then can collide with any object and identify its tag. If the tag of given object is interactable, then we would seek for the defined type of the object in the interactable info script, identify what kind of object it was, and access the according script based on the type to trigger the correct interaction with each identifiable object we have. It is a little convoluted, I know, but it just works. After all this, then I created the UI controller that handles the interaction display, so you could know when an object would be interactable, and it displayed the name and its description. To finally round things up this day, I filled the map up with multiple assets and started to define the purpose and layout of each room. I created a teleport for the spider to return, and a lever as well to be able to trigger electrical behaviors and components. This was starting to look pretty good. I made the teleport energy field emissive shader using the URP shader graph. I animated the offset Y of a Voronoi noise that was simply stretched and tiled. I created all the animations for the objects that require an interaction, and with all of that done and tested, it was time to go to bed. Day 8. I grabbed the spider model that I had lying around on my hard drive. I resurfaced it, UV mapped it, and textured it, re-rigged it, and finally reanimated it to create a more fluid-like looping movement for it. But I think this sentence doesn't convey the amount of time that this entire thing took me. It's okay. You don't pretty much have to know that, really. I tinkered a little bit with the player controls and improved them to be a little more fluid-like and stop sticking to ramps. I added the docking mechanism to be able to dock out of the pod's doorway, because at this point I had a scaling issue with the pod's doorway and the player scale, which is the reason why docking is a game feature at all. I had a brain cell level eureka moment when adding more interactions as identifiers in a switch statement, and decoupled the interaction system from the player, making it an interface for any interaction. This new interaction system takes advantage of the Unity event system. When the player decides to interact with any interactable object, the interface calls the interact function that triggers the events attached to that object interaction. You can attach multiple events to any object interaction without having to add a single line of code, which is nice. Day 9 started with me testing the light baking parameters. After finding something that I liked and felt happy with, I set off for the final map construction. Testing these light baking parameters now will help me convey a look early on and stop tinkering with the settings like a monkey would. After constructing a massive portion of the map, I took a deep breath and woke up for a moment. 9 days of constant work on the same stuff started to put a toll on my brain performance. So I sat for a while and started planning work for the next few days. In my opinion, this was going to be crucial to meet the end requirements of my game. After planning was scheduled and points were placed on the ice, I frantically finished the map with a few touches here and there, added the spider to the game, created its animation tree, and finally went to sleep. On day 10, things had to change. I touched a few things of the map, finessing some of the work that I did last day. Then I followed the plan, and finished major part of the interactivity of the game. Electrical systems of the ship were now ready to be turned on and off, and would control the entire lighting of the main derelict ship, from emergency to normal lights. Then, the teleport controls were added, yet not finished, as I needed to find a way to detect the spider at the teleport location. I improved the docking mechanism of the player movement by no longer making it crawl in one single snap. And finally, added all the reflection probes to all the room prefabs, which would turn out to be a problem as prefab reflection probes don't retain transform parent locality. Quite a pity. In day 11, this day was important, I added the spider interactivity by providing it with a navigation mesh agent and an NPC controller script that would target the given position, calling the agent to go to that position while animating the spider. I finally completed the teleport lever sequence, which would technically be, at this point, the end of the game, and when the entire ship goes, yeah, clanko kaboom. Okay, yeah. After this, I created these 16 times the detail Sparks particle system effects and sprinkled them a little bit around the entire ship. And let me reassure you, if you do not see the detail here, it is because of the YouTube's compression algorithm, and I'm sorry for you, but it's there. I started adding sound effects to objects and interactions. I made the most regrettable decision to implement the computer emulation system that I have been working on a year ago. The reason I implemented it at all was to prove if the system could be reliable with multiple computers simultaneously in the same level, and if it proved to be implementable as an interactable that you could enter and exit. It proved quite challenging to implement as it required to modify many components simultaneously when interacting with it, but I think I got away with it. So yeah, it was valuable, something that added nothing else to the game than simply a little bit of lore. A lot of work for nothing. In day 12, I added the survival system so the players needed to refill their oxygen, and in case they didn't, they died. And for the final sequence, so the players could lose health and die. I fixed the interaction display size to be a more reasonable size. I finally fixed the teleport spider detection sensor, so you could finally trigger the end game. I added Doc's lore to each computer. Doc's editor console and many other features are deprecated at this point. Added AI malfunctioning system in main deck control rooms. Now I thought that this was going to be the new end trigger after teleporting the spider. Added the AI end sequence download process. In this case, you would download the AI and that would trigger the end sequence. From there on, you should simply just run and go to your pod to leave the ship. I have to say that in order to configure each computer, it required me to recreate each prefab and prepare it to be a unique computer with each new texture asset and a new material asset, which actually took a little bit of time. At this point, I wasn't even taking note. Day 13 and 14 were the last days, and I was pretty much just sprinting at this point. And oh boy, we're going to take a look at that. These are the final days, and time was creeping up, and I needed to polish many things and aspects of the game. I finally added teleport sounds, spider sounds, and walking sounds. Basically, all types of sounds I needed to make the game a compelling experience.
Amazing error found.
As well, I modified many of the sounds to achieve a more desired effect on each one of them. I accelerated the AI download process. Now it finally triggers the end kaboom sequence, and I required myself to add scary sounds, but I forgot. I added the pause menu to the game for pausing settings and modifying some of the settings like the resolution and other stuff. And finally, the menu access and the possibility for filling the oxygen was finally added. I added the final death sequence once the life bar got down to 0. I created the final fire escape sequence, which was the end sequence, targeting the pod and triggering the end animation cinematic. That end animation cinematic then would trigger the credits roll cinematic. I as well added the start animation cinematic that would be triggered once you enter the game and start the game. What was left at this point is to make a final bake of the lightning of the game, make a final baking of the navigation mesh system of the spider, make a final adjustments to basically everything I could in the game, check all the logic, all the menus that were working correctly, if everything was correctly tangibly working, and make the build, throw it out, test it 2-3 times. I saw some bugs, but it said, it's okay, Raymond, just throw it out, you need to do it. And this, guys, is how Singularity Protocol came to be. You can download this game right now in itch.io. If you've enjoyed this video, you can actually check it out. I hope I see you in the next one. Take care, and bye.